Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
What is up? Welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast. My name is Tom Dougherty, your host. This is the college football edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, which, as always, is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network, as we are going to cover the media days from the Pac-12 that happened a couple days ago. They only need one day for the Pac-12 compared to some of these other conferences that require multiple days. I mean, the Big Ten, they did it in two. The SEC needs four because that's all they have to talk about down there is college football. And just seemingly it gets more and more. I mean, you get a Big Ten network. You got Paul Feinbaum and his show all year long, seemingly, and it's pretty awesome because it's a year-round thing down there. And, I mean, we talked about it, how you kind of get like that European football where you have these small towns and they just explode and become super, super ultra passionate for their college football team. And it's, like I said, it's a year-round thing. And we're getting to the culmination of the wait, of the more boring time of the year-round thing, where it's no football going on and we're in the middle between spring football and, well, obviously we're getting closer to fall practice, only a couple weeks away. And that is marked by these media days that did happen over the last week. So we're going to talk about the Pac-12 media day. Get you some quotes from the coaches regarding their outlook for the season, different things that are going around, and news and notes, of course. And then we're also going to talk about. I do want to comment on ESPN actually came out with a rankings for the 21 teams that have won the national championship since the BCS started. So, I mean, you can try and guess who the number one team was. It's not Alabama. I'll give you that right now. And, actually, it's pretty interesting how looking at what they think were the most dominant teams to win a national championship, just probably obviously based off roster talent, based off of players probably who went into the NFL. I'm not sure exactly the criterion, but I could imagine some of it. So, we're going to talk about that around the end of the show today. So let's get right to it. Pac-12 Media Day. So we had obviously most coaches on hand. Bryce Love actually was not there because he went on ESPN, I think yesterday, and did say that he was working in a class and working on summer school too. So I mean, these guys are it's something like their schools are year round, especially at Stanford, because you have such a high demand and a high requirement for, excellence basically at that school. And you should probably get some work done during the summertime when you don't have football practice twice a day. Well, not twice a day. You have weights and then practice, so two different things you have to do, and then also studying your playbook. And watching film and all this other stuff you have to do to be a football player. Oh, by the way, you're also going to one of the best universities in the United States that requires quite the rigorous study habits and a game plan or daily routine to be able to get through that university. So I mean, Bryce Love also is the first running back to rush. Well, did he break 2,000 yards, or he's right up against it and not declare for the NFL? So he's coming back after a crazy season and looks to build on that. And then maybe even, honestly, there was a pretty crowded running back draft last year. So, throwing him in there, he may have been fine, honestly, getting whether he was worried about if he's going to get picked second or third. But I bet you it's easier for him to kind of go to school, finish his degree and play football versus getting drafted, having to go play professionally, and then having to figure out a way to finish his school. So might as well just do it all at the same time for Bryce Love. All right. So, I mean, it does set a dangerous precedent. Of course, CBS like, oh my gosh, he didn't show up. It sets a precedent that he was in class. He obviously wanted to be there. I mean, this is down, and why wouldn't you want to go? I mean, I saw, but you could look at these kids. I mean, Jake Browning at Washington, you look at his Instagram page, he's having a blast. You look at the guy he went with, their big senior corner. They're from Washington. Those guys, they had like a photo booth. They're putting on like little costume thing. It was like they're having fun. It was a fun little well, not little, but fun event down there. And of course, you're in LA, you're in Hollywood, you're with the stars anyway. So why wouldn't you want to go? So Bryce Love obviously did want to go, but obviously he was able to. He did join the media day actually during via Skype. It did turn out, but he's the best player in this conference. To some think, obviously there's other players who probably can try and prove otherwise, like a Khalil Tate or a Justin Herbert or a Jake Browning of sorts. So I mean, there's definitely some talent in this conference, and it's fun to know. So here's the quote from Love, telling us. I mean, obviously quoting on that when asking why he wasn't there. He said, "Me personally, I really wanted to be there to represent the university, but I decided I just wasn't able to make it happen this year. Based on other commitments, trying to graduate in December required me to take more classes over the summer." There you go. That was really difficult because obviously the guy wants to finish school within the football season, focus and see if they can get obviously to a New Year's Six Bowl or something like that at the end of the year. And then it's going to be NFL combine season, baby. It's going to be draft season right after that. You're going to bounce right into it. You got to do pro days. You got your, obviously you got the combine and everything. So he was trying to get school out of the way. Good for you. You're trying to graduate from, like I said, the best university on the west of the Mississippi. And you're going to do it in 3.5 years, seemingly, because that's what he's not a redshirt, is he? He's not a redshirt senior, so I think he is just a true senior coming in this year, and he's gonna graduate in December. So good for him. And obviously, yeah, you need to take summer classes. That's how it works. You got to be able to do it. And of course, this precedent they're so worried about setting is because players couldn't just use that as an excuse and just not show up, and then we won't get any funness or fun from being around the players during the pro days. But I mean, I'm not really worried about it. You're going to get players. People are going to go. I mean, there's guys who really want to go and really want to be involved in that and have the ability to do it because they don't have quite the demand from their academics that they do at Stanford. Not taking anything away. There's some great universities in that conference, believe me. But Stanford probably reigns supreme. No offense to anything else, but it is the seat of power when it comes to academic minds around the West Coast. All right, but I mean, this is obviously a issue, of course, asked, and of course, Paul Feinbaum. SEC. If this happened in the SEC, of course, they're saying Paul Feinbaum would have just been crazy and would have crashed the set and simultaneously combust. And oh my gosh, one of the best running backs didn't show up to the media day. Paul Feinbaum went, phew. But that's right. I mean, he spoke to him via Skype. He got on there. He saw him. He was honest. He was genuine. I mean, it might set the precedent that players can just sit at home and do their interviews virtually, which is honestly where we're kind of headed these days anyways, with the great quality that you have. So Larry Scott did, of course, get asked about it, and he's quoted in saying, we talked to him, but this is a serious commitment that he felt like he had to make. It is really hard to criticize that, but that's what we're preaching all the time, giving these kids a chance to get education. Exactly. Any conference commissioner at the NCAA has absolutely no room to go out and say, oh yeah, this player should go and forego his academic studies that he is doing extra over the summer because he's a football player, probably. He doesn't want to take a massive load of classes during this football season, and he still wants to graduate. So that's what summer school is for. They have no room to say, "Oh yeah, no, we want them to value the football over the education." Then you're kind of losing your whole basis of the amateurism question, where it's all about getting the education. They're being paid with this education. They're being given the opportunity to learn and grow, and then be able to have a career after their career, which is true. There's plenty of examples of guys moving right along after the football careers. One of the Niners, they had a guy named Brent Jones. He retired and he opened up a venture capitalist firm. I mean, look at that. So, I mean, now the guy's a venture capitalist and he's funding companies around Silicon Valley. I mean, that's honestly why. For those who want to, I know California has a lot of income tax and sales to all the taxes and everything they have here, estate tax. But if you're a professional athlete like a Kevin Durant, why do you think Kevin Durant came to California? I know the Warriors are obviously good, but he's going to be dead smack in the middle of the tech bubble, a tech area right there. I mean, tech bubble, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, tech areas, you're going to be connected with VCs, you're going to be connected with rubbing uglies with, elbows with Mark Zuckerberg and Larry Ellison, and you can go probably have lunch with Sergey or Larry Page if you really wanted to. He's Kevin Durant. I mean, come on. He's basically, I mean, it's why wouldn't you want to come out here? And if you're a star, why wouldn't you want to come out here other than maybe, it's a little expensive, but you're getting paid pretty darn nicely. So take that into account and enjoy the weather and don't complain. So you can also go. I mean, Andre Iguodala. I know it's a college football show, but I'm just telling you that this is the area to be, and this is a situation where you can have some success in getting through your education in college. It's funny I bring up basketball players because Kevin Durant went to Texas for about a year, and Andre Iguodala went to Arizona. I think he went there for 2 years actually. But Bryce Love, he wants to finish his education. He's right there in Palo Alto and Stanford. He could probably bounce right into whatever he wants. He wants to be. Actually, I think he's a human biology major, so he's gonna be a doctor. You know that. That's why he wants to graduate so he can play. He's going to go to medical school probably and be a doctor. So there you go. The guy's a genius. So I mean, and he also is a pretty darn good football player. I mean, I say he's the best player in the division. I mean, the conference as of right now. So do most of the pundits. They say that too, and they even said it like, "Oh, we asked Larry Scott, but why his best player wasn't here?" Like the whole conference. He's like, okay, well, we got other good players here. He's doing something he needed to do. Obviously, didn't care. The public, exactly. I don't really care if he's there or not. I'm going to still hear a quote from him. I still got a quote from him. You're able to write this article. We're able to talk about it on this show. So, I mean, obviously, the virtuality of the interview that he did through Skype does, of course, set a dangerous precedent because of the fact that this might lead the way to other players doing the same thing, where we're basically just going to have a room of reporters and a TV and a projector screen, and they just come on the screen and they ask them questions through the internet. So, I mean, honestly, not the worst thing in the world. They're right there. They're not going to get any. You're not going to lose any. Anything probably from the quote or anything, but the fact that they're in the room with you and you can actually I don't know, you probably can get more access because you can get them after they leave the podium versus when they leave the chair or that they're recording or at least doing the video chat. That's it. They're done. It's over. They're out of there. So maybe that's from a journalism standpoint, you're not going to be able to go get your scoops from anybody who like off the podium or something like that, which is where a lot of things happen. So we can go through there, of course, we're going to talk about in the next segment the coaches. I know we just a little Bryce Love here, but obviously the media is going to, of course, say, oh, because he didn't show up to this media day, Stanford can't complain when he doesn't win the Heisman. Well, Stanford's not going to complain when he doesn't win the Heisman because, I mean, maybe there's going to be a quarterback if a quarterback plays well, if a quarterback really plays well for the whole season, he's going to win the Heisman because the quarterbacks are going to be winning the Heisman more often than not. That's the way the game's going these days. We have only had, I think in the last 10 years, 2 running backs, and they both went to Alabama. So, I mean, Christian McCaffrey could have won the Heisman. He didn't get it. Stanford had a quarterback that should have won it twice, probably. He didn't get it. either time. And, it is what it is. We're out here in the West Coast, and the game starts at 7:30 Pacific time, and nobody really can watch it. And when you have actually an opportunity to get in front of the media and try and spread your voice and get in front of people who are out in the East, and he didn't go because he had priorities. So that's, of course, what the opportunity cost of, don't complain when it's when the Heisman because he didn't go to media day. Okay, really? It's freaking July 25th. Heisman Trophy announcement is what? In December? So I think we're okay. We have some time to see Bryce Love, and his highlights will speak for themselves. All right. We'll come back after the break, and we'll do some more talk on this Pac-12 Media Day. We're going to get some not sound. You're going to hear me. We're going to get some quotes from Herm Edwards, from Chip Kelly, from Kevin Sumlin, and I'm going to try to do everybody. We're going to hit everybody, especially all the new coaches in the Pac-12, as there's 4 of them, or 5 of them, 4 or 5. Kevin Sumlin, both the Arizona schools, UCLA, Oregon State, and Oregon. So 5, yep. So we'll do that when we come back, and everybody stay tuned.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC College Football Edition of the GSMC Football Podcast. On a Friday today here, as we end our week with some talk over the Pac-12 Media Days. I know it was a couple days ago, but we had the show. I recorded the show at like 7 o'clock in the morning, so I was not able to get any of the juicy details while I was recording. I mean, obviously, it happened all after on Wednesday down in Los Angeles. All right. I mean, next time. I mean, I know Bryce Love was kind of the topic last time. And now let's go to the coaches. This Pac-12 season is going to be very interesting because you have, like I said, 5 new coaches this year, and we're in a situation where one of them or a few of them have had previous coaching experience. Chip Kelly in the same conference at Oregon. You had Kevin Sumlin coming over from Texas A&M. I know Herm Edwards, obviously, he had his experience in the NFL a while back, but I know some of the people have been speculating, you can't go from the studio back to the field. I mean, if anything, he's going to create he's a kind of a stepping stone coach where you're waiting for another guy to open up and become available, and he's going to really help the culture. I mean, maybe not on the field, but the culture of the football program at Arizona State is what he's going to really put his mark on this season. So looking back at this stuff and the Herm Edwards quotes we had from Wednesday, of course, he had, of course, asked if he was still in broadcast mode. And, I mean, of course, people are like, or which camera should I look at? Which something like that. So he was asked if he's still in broadcast mode. And this is his quote. He's like, am I supposed to be looking at you? Am I looking at you, cameraman? Who am I looking at? The camera? Okay, got all these cameras. I don't know who to look at. Who's in charge of this? Somebody send somebody up here and say what camera you're supposed to look at. Okay, you guys are supposed to ask questions. Start asking. And he's like, no messing around. I mean, this is a guy, he was asked about his life motto. I mean, he was asked about his response to, he's been out of football. The fact that he's been out of football was the whole like knock on him. The fact that, okay, exactly, you can't go from the studio back to the field. And his response to that was, I never had a job. I've always been involved in football, playing football, coaching football, talking about football. That's what I've done. That's what I do. People think, well, he's out of football maybe on the sidelines, but mentally you're never out of football. It's like being a football fan. At what age do you stop watching it? You don't. Yeah, that's true. But I mean, then you, of course, can go back and say, well, there's a difference between watching it in a studio with Trey Wingo and what's the other guys over there? I'm trying to think of their names. But over there at the for NFL Live or for whatever show he's doing for ESPN or was doing, versus being in a locker room on a sideline dealing with 18, 19, 20, 22, 23-year-olds, 21-year-olds doing whatever they want to do. I mean, Arizona State is not in the middle of nowhere. It's in Tempe, which is right beneath Phoenix and Scottsdale. There's a million things to do down there. Lots of places to get in trouble, lots of places to get in tough situations, and coaches have to deal with that. So whether he's ready to kind of take the challenge of having to deal with a very young team, obviously any college team is younger than you're going to have in the NFL. Where the NFL, you're going to have adults, and you're going to have men, you're going to have guys that have been through this and over again, veterans. I mean, have been in the league for 7, 8, 9 years, versus college guys who are there for 3 years if they're lucky, 4 if they need an extra one, basically. So you're basically turning over and over again. What I do think is, like I said, he's going to help with the culture, and hopefully he's got some good talent evaluators, and he's going to be great in the living room, in the kitchen, talking to parents. That's the one thing. He's going to be very good with that. He speaks with a lot of conviction, and he'll be able to recruit probably pretty well. I don't know about when it comes to actually identifying talent. He'll probably, obviously, there's a recruiting coordinator and all this stuff like that. People who are actually talent evaluators and talent seekers, and he's the guy who's like, okay, I like this kid. I'm going to go to his house and try and convince his parents and him to come to our school. So that's kind of the way it is. When he was asked about whether ASU was a good fit or not, obviously coming full circle and such, this was what he said. So Arizona State was one of my top 2 schools when I was getting recruited to figure out where I was going to go. And Frank Kush recruited me. I tell people all the time of one of the reasons I didn't go is because I couldn't play in Rose Bowl. So I went to Cal. So it's kind of a complete circle to me. Because so he went to Cal. This is a guy. He's from Monterey. He's actually from Central California. Herm Edwards. Actually, I went to school in Monterey down there actually. And when I was going to college, I worked at Chipotle, and he came in there, and I'm like, Coach, and it was pretty cool. So I mean, he comes around Monterey once in a while when he can get over to the West Coast. Obviously, he's going to be over here a lot more because of the fact that he's going to be living in Tempe and coaching the Sun Devils for this year, and not in Bristol, Connecticut, like he was before working for ESPN. So good for Coach. I'm excited to see him this year, as I think a lot of people are, especially with the Sun Devils. I mean, their roster remains to be seen, kind of. But it's still kind of a situation where, I mean, you haven't coached in a while. You haven't been in a locker room. You haven't been on the field. You haven't been on the sidelines. You haven't been in the play calling situations. You run, you pass. There's lots of 50-50 decisions you have to make in the clutch, in the short term, especially when you are down there. So continuing on, there was actually this is the first time the Pac-12 has been, and I want to touch on this really quickly. This is the last time that first time actually that the Pac-12 has all been kind of together as a conference since the passing of Tyler Hilinski. And the Pac-12 did a very, very nice job of remembering him and his lasting memory, as they did, of course. Many of them were wearing wristbands during the events on Wednesday with Hilinski's Hope, which is a raise awareness for and funds for the foundation that was started on behalf of Tyler. So, which is a pretty cool thing. Obviously, you see a lot. Chip Kelly was wearing his, and everybody else was too, especially Coach Leach. So, this was one of the quotes. We had UCLA John Woods, who actually went to high school with Hilinski, spoke to a reporter from the Pac-12 network, Ashley Adamson, and he said, this is what he said. He said, "I told the team, if you're ever going through anything, come to me. You can always come to me. You want to communicate with people around you, be genuine, and ask people how they're doing. You want to be real about it." As that's actually a really, really powerful statement for many reasons, because obviously it's coming from a kid that went to school with Tyler and has known him for a long time, and I'm sure was extremely, extremely devastated with the news. And he's coming out and saying that we live in a society where men want to be tough and we're sports, we're playing football, it's football, man. So you kind of can shield certain things and not be as open as you possibly could be with your emotions and your feelings and things that are going through your head and doubts on yourself and everything like that. And this kid is telling you, don't do that. Don't do that. Come to me. Go find somebody. If anything, you come to, the thing is, he's opening himself up. That's another reason. I'm not saying it's multiple reasons why this is a great quote, because he's not only addressing the issue of the fact that guys don't want to do that. You got to be real about it. So we say, be real. Don't mess around. Don't joke. Don't say, oh, I'm good. Don't do that. Don't do that. Be real. And he's also opening himself up to be an advocate and be a friend and be a teammate and be a fellow football player for those who need it. And so good for him and good for that kid to come out of the situation and give a good quote and hopefully he can help somebody else out if they need it. All right, moving along. As we do get to Coach Leach's. I do have Coach Leach's comments on Tyler. As this is what he said. We are all proud of the experience to have known Tyler and the way he would light up the group. The other thing is we want to also honor Tyler by being the best we can be, the best team that we can be. And I think most on our team feel this way, if not all. That's that. Of course, Coach Leach, he's obviously when trying to prepare for a new season. You're in the tough division in the Pac-12 North, and then you obviously have to deal with stuff like this. It puts things in perspective. And of course, you can use it as a way to motivate yourself. You can use it as a way to bring your team together. And you could tell Coach Leach. I'm watching. You can because they have. I love these days. It's great because Twitter has all the video saved. So the Pac-12 Network Twitter account put out a bunch of clips from the media day. So if you want to go look at Pac-12 media, Pac-12 Network's at Pac-12 Network, the number 12. You can find that little clip of Coach Leach talking to a couple guys from the Pac-12 Network about Tyler. So that's Yogi Roth and Mike Yam talking about how they're going to honor him this year with their play on the field and their some stuff that they're going to have around the campus. All right, moving along as we're going to go to over to Chip Kelly. I know we're coming kind of close to the end of the segment, so. I do want to. We're going to go. We're not done with Pac-12 yet. We're going to go over to the other side of the break in just a moment and continue with this Pac-12 stuff. Of course, we really want to address that. I mean, it's something that rocked the entire football world and especially the Pac-12 being, and then of course being the first time that everybody's together and talking about it. It's great to get the quotes that we did. So gotta love that. Especially in the circumstances that the terrible circumstances that we are in, of course. Especially, so I'm gonna give some sound or at least relaying some sound from Coach Peterson. We're gonna have Coach David Shaw, Coach Chip Kelly. Obviously, I want to kind of get to the some of the newer coaches as we get the podium. Obviously. He might bring Mike Leach. Of course, I'm going to continue. We'll stick with Washington State for this segment at least. But Mike Leach said he likes the hustle and bustle of LA, and he wants to bring it up. I mean, this is a guy who coached in Lubbock, Texas, for a long time, and he says that Mike Leach fears that he might bring this all the hustle and such from LA to Pullman, and whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, we'll find out obviously what he says, but he was asked about it, and he said you might sit in the car, listen to the radio, look at the person beside you get flipped off. I always thought it was kind of funny when somebody flipped me off, I'd laugh. And he said because and then of course he keeps going. It's like, that's the difference between LA and somebody else and other sounds. And he's like, good food is right there. Well, I'd wait in line. Okay, well, you can stand here, but I'll be here at the counter doing nothing. So when you're ready to order, come order. That's what he was talking about. The sacrifices you make when you live in in Pullman. Obviously, you can't wait in line anymore because he's the coach. He's coach, and versus being in Pullman and being the coach of the university versus being in LA and kind of just being a nobody. That's what he was comparing it to. It's funny. He's like, I was driving down in LA and just got flipped off by some random person, and then compared to me being in Pullman where I get front of the line. I get to put in the front of the line before anybody else. They'll take my order no matter what. I don't have to wait in line. It's just like almost like royalty versus they would get the prince and the pauper if you're up on the top of the country or down at the bottom of the western seaboard. So I thought that was pretty cool. I wanted to let you guys know that. Of course, I've been following Coach Leach for a long time. When back at Texas Tech, I loved watching him and his offense. Obviously, he's very ingenuitive. And then, of course, the comments and everything that he had to say about Tyler Hilinski and his plans for this year are very moving. And I'm excited to kind of see what they're going to do for this season because the kid deserves it, and he deserves this season to be dedicated to him. All right, that'll wrap it up for this segment, and we'll come back and do some talk for, like I said, Coach Shaw, Coach Chip Kelly, Coach Cristobal over there in Oregon, Coach Peterson up in Washington. We're going to get to them and give you some of the stuff they were saying during the Pac-12 media days on their site. So stay tuned.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back, GSMC Football Podcast, the college football edition here on a Friday. Today's we're ending our week with some talk with the on the Pac-12 and the Pac-12 media days as we get to the stuff that was talked about by David Shaw. As of course everybody wanted to know, where's Bryce? And it actually did get reported that Bryce had to go to class. He could not miss that class because the class did not have any. The professor, for some reason, did not allow excused absences. So, or that's what it was. Or he didn't have any left, or whatever it was. I don't know. That's why he didn't. I'm reading them more deeper into that. But of course, he's asked about Bryce. Of course, he asked about that. But then, of course, they have other players on their team. They have other players. They have a guy named Caden Smith, who is going to be a very good tight end in his career, and he's supposed to be apparently the next Zach Ertz, according to Coach Shaw. He was quoted, said, "We just said we saw the next Zach Ertz." Literally what he said about when he sees the potential in Caden Smith, of course, as Zach Ertz, and then we've had Colby Fleener as well, being safety blankets for whether it was Andrew Luck or not at quarterback for the Stanford Cardinal. Of course, KJ Costello. Of course, the running backs are going to steal the show. Costello is going to be kind of that more game manager quarterback, but using the play action, Caden Smith and Costello can really gouge some defenses and get some big chunk plays when you get those linebackers kind of pushed up on the line as well. So, it's pretty interesting knowing that Stanford offense is going to be humming this year. It's going to be exciting because they don't just have Bryce Love. They also have a couple other running backs who are going to be interesting, and they have this kid Caden Smith who is, like you said, drawing comparisons to Zach Ertz, Super Bowl winning quarterback for the Super Bowl winning tight end for the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, Bryce Love did miss the show. Another thing to take away from Stanford, of course, is actually Elijah Holder. So Elijah Holder is a really interesting player. He's a good little DB there. Quinton Meeks kind of groomed him out of there, and Holder actually did have a career high in forced fumbles, and he's going to be taking that buck role on the team as well. So he was quoted in saying, "My nickname was Bambi, but now I'm a buck." So he's grown up, and he's going to be a guy who's going to be a force in that defense for the Cardinal this year. And then all eyes are on UCLA. Obviously, Chip Kelly is going to prepare those Bruins, but you're going to be able to look at that last game of the year. Stanford is going to need it at the end of the year probably to get into a college to the at least the Pac-12 championship game, and it's going to be at UCLA. So down there, as we're going to be looking at that very closely. All right, next up, I want to give some Chip Kelly comments, as of course he was down there for his not his first media day as a coach in the Pac-12, but his first as the coach of the University of California in Los Angeles, the Bruins, down there in Westwood. As of course he was asked, of course, about his return to Autzen Stadium when he comes back when the Bruins visit the Ducks up in Eugene. And he was quoted in saying that it's going to be difficult. He said, this is what he quoted in saying, "It will be difficult, to be honest with you, because it's a special place. It's one of the real hallowed grounds of college football. If you ever played a game in the stadium, whether you're a home team or the visitor, you'll remember it. It's a special fan base." And he's right. That's actually just kind of commenting on the stadium, just in general. It's an awesome stadium. If you've ever been to Eugene, or if you live in California, it's a great little drive, because Oregon honestly is. I know Oregon's becoming more and more emerging as becoming a popular travel destination now these days. But if you want like this is kind of going away from the football a little bit here, just a little advocacy on Oregon. If you want to rent a travel trailer or a fifth wheeler or an RV or something like that, go to Oregon, because you have literally everything you possibly want. You have great coastal little cities. You have the colleges to go visit, or in Eugene, and then up in Corvallis, they're only about 45 minutes to an hour away. Then you go another 45 minutes from Corvallis, and you're in Beaverton, where the Nike headquarters are. And then you can keep going, and you're in Portland, which is obviously self-explanatory of a great U.S. city. And then you can go over to the middle of Oregon, to Bend, and go into lava tubes, go down to Klamath Falls. I mean, there's just literally everything you possibly could do. Obviously, Autzen Stadium in Eugene is one of the big landmarks of the state and of college football, and it has become a hallowed ground in the sport, because they were darn good. Oregon was really good for a while. I mean, obviously you had why can I not remember the name of the quarterback they had before Marcus Mariota? Obviously, they've had a couple other guys like Thomas and other guys who have gone to the NFL, but obviously they're speed demon guys. But it's gonna be difficult. I can imagine the fan base it's rowdy. They pack them on in there. It's at that big grandstand over, I think, on the east side of the stadium. I could be wrong. I don't really know, but the stadium is actually also pretty cool, because it literally is over the river and through the woods to get to the stadium from the campus. It's not really on the campus. It's kind of over the river and through the woods to get to that stadium, which is pretty fun. For Oregon, I mean, the university, the campus at Oregon is literally an arboretum. I mean, it's all trees. There's trees literally everywhere. The whole campus is an arboretum. All right. He actually was continued on saying about this, his return to Autzen Stadium. Coach Kelly, he said, "I know how difficult it is for opposing teams to go in there and win, because of that fan base is unbelievable. Even though it is not the biggest stadium in college football, because there's ones that are just absolutely ridiculous, it is the loudest stadium in college football. It is going to be a difficult task for us when we head over there." That's what he was commenting on there as well. So, interesting sound from Chip Kelly. I mean, I think he kind of kept his mouth a little more shut when it came to the quarterback stuff. When it actually came down to real team stuff, he was deflecting kind of questions. I don't really think he was trying to give that much in there. But this is his. I do want to give you some of his quotes regarding him adapting into the program. He said, this is he was asked how he was adapting to the program at UCLA. He said, "I think when I first came into this league, there weren't many spread offenses, and they were the only team that had shiny helmets, and now everybody runs the spread offense, and everybody has shiny helmets. I think the game itself has changed. So UCLA obviously has the nice shiny gold helmets. I think the game itself has changed, so I think you have to change it. If I have had a great experience since I left Oregon from a football standpoint, so being in the NFL for 4 years, and then last year being out and getting a chance to study the game I think will help me. I think as staff, when we put together, I think we're cognizant of how we put our players in the best position to make plays. It's pretty boilerplate stuff, but he's saying some stuff there where, obviously he's coming to a school where they were the first kind of to do everything. The first run the spread offense, were first to have the shiny helmets and everything. Then he was one of the guys to make it huge spread offense. The Oregon uniforms speak for themselves and everything. But he's definitely ready to go for this season because the game has changed itself. Is absolutely right. You have to definitely change with it. He was in the NFL. He's took that year off. He's back in college now where I think, obviously he had success in the NFL. The Eagles were a good roster for him, I think. The Niners were not. The Niners roster was cruddy. That was bad when he was there. But, it is what it is. And he's down in Westwood, and he can probably has a nice little house in Brentwood and can have fun being the coach of the UCLA Bruins. Because it's not a bad gig. You're not like you gotta win because it's a basketball school. It really, at the tried and true, it's a basketball school, and it's also a very, very good academic school. So they're really worried about football isn't king. Football isn't an absolute must win. And really, none of these schools, maybe USC is maybe the only one, USC. In the Pac-12, where football is like, oh my gosh, they have to win. Like the SEC, where it's like, if we don't win, it's a travesty, it's a blasphemy, crazy. No, or UCLA isn't like that. USC maybe is a little bit like that, but still, you're in LA, and there's a lot of other stuff to pay attention to, and that'll distract you from a bad USC team. But yeah, no, it's interesting because you have Stanford, which is good at pretty much every sport, girls and boys, tennis, golf, soccer, basketball, baseball. They're good at everything. Crew, everything, rugby. And Washington's a good basketball school. Washington State's a good basketball school. Oregon, they've had success on the basketball court. So, this isn't just the football conference. They call it the Conference of Champions for a reason because they win a lot of championships in multiple different sports. Look at the Capital One Cup, which they used to do. I think it's supposed to like aggregate all of the championships won by a single school and across the different sports, men's and women's and everything. And I think University of North Carolina and Stanford were like 1 and 2. Because they both have really good other sports. They're very good at baseball, both schools, soccer, everything, lacrosse over there in Carolina. So that's a little tangent there for a little bit, but it is interesting looking at the dynamic of seeing how much pressure Chip Kelly's going to have on him down there at UCLA. All right, moving on, I want to go over to some stuff that Chris Peterson said on Wednesday as he was asked about the favorites, or entering the season as a favorite, or the favorite this year. Obviously, with the surrounding cast, with Jake Browning, you do lose Dante Pettis, but they have a next man up mentality there. Where we've had one of their deep. I know he's not a receiver, but they have a next man up mentality across the board there. We had a quote from their DB, one of their top DBs, saying, "It doesn't matter. All these guys, our whole depth chart is good. If somebody goes down, the next guy's going to step up and be just as good as him." So they're not really worried about it. They have a very deep roster there at Washington. So this is the quote from Coach Peterson when asked if what it means to him to be the favorite coming into the season. "Yeah, that doesn't mean anything to us." There you go. "So there's no more expectation put on us from the day that we walked into the building. We expect to be good and win games. That's never changed. So because other people, think that we might win some games, that doesn't really change our mindset, obviously. I think the only thing about it for me, I'd like to be on a different team than you guys are on. I'd rather prove you wrong than prove you right. Now we're working to prove you right rather than prove you wrong." So, he obviously coming from Boise State, where you're the consummate underdog, and playing from a smaller conference and going in there and kind of stirring the pot and muddying the waters with a very good Boise State team and getting into a big BCS bowl as well. and beating an Oklahoma team back when they did with that Statue of Liberty play. But he's kind of now in a different sense. He's in a place where he's the favorite. He is that Oklahoma team now, at least in his conference. He is, and there's going to be a test. There's going to be a test. He's going to have to prove people right, obviously. But there's probably some people who, like me, who think that Stanford will stand in their way a little bit more than other people think, and that we're going to have some pushback maybe from an Arizona team. I think your top 3 teams in this conference are Washington, Arizona, and Stanford, or Washington, Stanford, and Arizona. If you want to go that direction, I think Arizona has a pretty good chance. Utah also is a pretty solid team this year as well. Watch out for them down there, as obviously they're in the South Division. Your North Division is the 2 Oregon schools, the 2 Washington schools, and Stanford and Cal. That's basically it. And then the South is the 2 Arizona schools, the 2 LA schools, and then Washington, well, I can't say it. Colorado and Utah are the ones down there. So, I think USC is going to be interesting this year. The problem is that nobody's really cruddy, except for Oregon State. That's really it. Nobody's really that bad. Arizona State might be. Cal, they actually have a quarterback, so they might be decent this year. Ross Bowers is pretty good. You saw what he did last year with his flip into the end zone. But no, it's going to be a fun year for the Pac-12. We're going to keep talking about it on the other side of the break, and then we're also going to talk about some of the rankings for our historical rankings regarding the 21 teams that have won a national championship since they changed over to the BCS. All right, stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Football Podcast, the college football edition, as we're going to do some more quotes really quickly from some of these coaches, as I wanted to go to Kevin Sumlin. It's what Arizona, I think the fact that you have a quarterback and you're going to have some talent, they'll find somebody. I know the media thinks it's a rebuild, but when you have Khalil Tate, you should be able to at least win a couple games. I'd hope so. This is what Kevin Sumlin had to say when he was asked on about starting a rebuild, quote unquote rebuild at Arizona. This is he said, "I think it's the same as we've done at the last 2 stops. I think we've shown the ability to recruit and develop student athletes athletically and academically. That doesn't really change. We played at different levels." He's saying we as in him and his coaching staff, pretty much. That doesn't really change. We played at a different levels, even at the University of Houston, and playing the SEC and Big 12 games and winning those games and being in another league. Our recruiting philosophy is not going to change. Hopefully we can retain because of our location and the great players in this state. But obviously we're going to have to branch out and be in California and be back in Texas and all points in between. So he's definitely committed to the recruiting. He's a great recruiter. You got to know that. Maybe if he can get it figured out on on the field kind of situation, X's and O's, it'll be pretty good. So I also wanted to talk about Mario Cristobal. He had a big long quote on. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but he was asked about Justin Herbert and how he's growing as a leader at Oregon, and he had to say, Justin much more vocal. He's now becoming a field general. I think he was a quarterback last year, and now he's becoming a field general. That guy understands how to flip protections. He understands, well, we're getting a 7-man rush here. There's going to play cover 0. I got to keep 7 guys to protect. How to call a tight end, change their running backs, and get them protection opportunity. Oh, I mean, that sounds pretty good to me. I mean, that's a quarterback trait right there. I mean, that's basically NFL stat. I mean, not quite NFL status, but being able to adjust protections, read the defense, know where blitzes are coming from, or at least try and make an educated guess of where blitzes are coming from, know what kind of package they're running in the secondary. So, I mean, that's a good scenario right there. Obviously, it may be a little easier one to read if you're talking about something where a cover zero like that, where they're going to be coming at you, basically. But no, so he continued on saying he understands the run game like a coordinator does, meaning he could get us into advantage runs when we're not in one or facing pressure. So, I mean, that's kind of like a Peyton Manning situation where Peyton would go to the line with 3 plays. He'd have 2 passes and a run play. And if they were in the passing play, he'd check to the run like that because he could read the defense. He had some holes, and the linebackers were going to. You can try and scheme the linebackers away from the running back. So that's definitely something that you're probably going to see from the Oregon offense this year. Continuing on to some of these new coaches. Obviously, we had Mario Cristobal's comments right there. Justin Smith's the new head coach at Oregon State. He was asked about Dennis Erickson's influence on his coaching style. And he had to say, a lot for sure. I try to have a lot. I think I learned a ton in regards to competing and into motivating. I never back down. Those are some of his attributes that I've linked on to for sure. I think his ability to evaluate talent is something that a lot of people don't talk about. His ability, every stop he's made in the recruiting and evaluating guys that can play this game. That's pretty good. We're quoting a pretty good testament to a legendary coach in Dennis Erickson. Who else was? I mean, I think we've done everybody. We did all the new coaches. I've done Chip. We did Kevin Sumlin, Herm Edwards, Mario Cristobal, and then Jonathan Smith right there. All right, cool. So that'll wrap it up for our Pac-12 talk, at least for now. Believe me, we'll be having some plenty of it coming up. But I do want to go over and use the last about 9 minutes of the show today to talk about these rankings and the 21 championship teams we've had. So we'll start at number 10. Actually, I'm going to give you the rankings here right now. We'll start at number 10. Number 10 is the 1999 Florida State team. So I was 4 years old when that happened. But this is a team with Sebastian Janikowski. This is a guy that had Chris Winkie at quarterback. So this is a team that was number 1 in the preseason, and they kind of ran right down the line. To get to the pressure, through the pressure of being that number 1 seed preseason, and then culminating with a championship. Number 9 is the 2009 Alabama team. This is the Alabama team that had Mark Ingram, and this is a. This is the year before. This is the year before where actually they were kind of stopped short. They were undefeated, and Tim Tebow beat them in the SEC championship game. So they kind of avenged that the next year and became the BCS champions. This is their first time in 17 years, actually. So it's a big deal for them. That 2009 championship becoming even more and more storied. So, and then of course we bounced to the number 8, which actually is the 2015 Alabama championship team, and that is the year that they were able to hold off Deshaun Watson the first time. Remember, this is we had a rematch. So Alabama wins 45-40. Derrick Henry rushed for over 2,200 yards. That season had 28 touchdowns, won a Heisman Trophy. So obviously he was very, very good. And obviously, then of course the next year Clemson wins with that touchdown to Hunter Renfrow. Number 7, 12 is the 2012 Alabama team. So a couple years prior, when this is a team that kind of was interesting because it was the A.J. McCarron team. It wasn't Derrick Henry. Was it Trent Richardson maybe that was on that team? That obviously didn't do much in the NFL. But yeah, they were led by A.J. McCarron. I mean, they were actually a high-scoring offense. They averaged over 38 points a game out here. This is, of course, this is the one of the teams I said that of the 5 teams that Nick Saban's gotten titles with, this is one of the ones that was most balanced on offense and then on defense on both sides of the ball. So, I mean, this is a team that also had a defense that was absolutely deadly. This is a team that kicked the crap out of a Notre Dame team in the national championship game. I mean, remember that 42-14 thriller that we had back then? That was really fun. I mean, the defense held 11 of its 14 opponents to 14 points or less that season. Number 6, we're continuing a trend here, is actually the year prior. So remember that Alabama did win back-to-back titles in 11 and 12. So they're going to come in at number 6. This is I'll just tell you right now, the last Alabama team to be on this list. So the top 5 are Stance, Alabama. So we'll just continuing on here. But for the number 6, this is the team that's still Agent McCarron. As a sophomore, obviously got it away from Philip Sims, who was the starting job at least during the first week of the season. And of course was very good, ended up becoming the offensive MVP. And this is actually, McCarron was really the only, they had Greg McElroy there, obviously now with Jalen Hurts and Tua. This is one of the guys who really was able to sling the ball around. 23 of 34 passes for 234 yards against the LSU defense that had literally everybody that is playing in the NFL right now. Literally everybody. I'm pretty sure back then in 2011, that was Eric Reed. Probably was still on that team. I'm trying to think of other DBs because obviously LSU being known as DBU. Obviously, the 2 other guys, the wide receivers, we know from LSU. But that's a team that was very good. He was able to kind of work his way through that defense that year. So, of course, they win that national championship game over LSU as well, 21-0. Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, number 5 is the USC Trojans from 2004. Why wouldn't it be? This is probably one of the best teams in conference history in the Pac-12. You have Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, Liddell White. Those guys were a machine on offense. And when you win a national championship game, 55-19, you deserve to be on this list. As they beat Oklahoma in that one. Obviously, they played one of the tougher schedules in the country. You got to play Notre Dame every year. They always have big games in the Pac-12. With 2004, I'm not sure quite who was their big rival in the Pac-12. I don't know if Stanford wasn't quite that good yet. Actually, 04, that was when Cal had Aaron Rodgers? Probably. So they're pretty good. So definitely one of the tougher schedules, and they were able to go through it undefeated and blow out the Oklahoma Sooners in the national championship game. So that's pretty cool. Number 4 actually is this actually was kind of a surprise for me, but you have to remember, this was actually a really good team. This is 2013 Florida State Seminoles. This was the first year, I think, wasn't the first year they had the college football playoff was in 2013 when they beat Oregon in that play-in game, the semifinal game at the Rose Bowl, and they go and beat Auburn. I think it was Auburn, right, in the national championship game. So, Auburn. This was a team that blew everybody out. They blew out Oregon. Wait, no, am I thinking this completely wrong? Because didn't Oregon beat Jameis Winston in that game? I'm thinking of it wrong. I think this is before they changed over to the thing. So Jameis was still there. This is the year Jameis won the national championship game. The next year, I think it was the year 2014 is when they did the first college football playoff, and then you had Oregon versus Florida State, and Oregon won that game. That's right. So and then they lost the national championship game to Ohio State, I want to say. Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right. So yeah, this is back to the 2013 Florida State team after I got that all figured out in my head right there. I was only 1 year off. Give me a break. So yeah, 2013, Jameis Winston wins the Heisman Trophy as a redshirt freshman. You got Kelvin Benjamin, Devonta Freeman, Telvin Smith, LaMarcus Joyner, Nick O'Leary, Tim Jerrican, Rashawn Green. These are all guys that are. LaMarcus Joyner, great corner. He's out in. I think he's in LA still for the Rams. Telvin Smith is a great linebacker for the Jacksonville Jaguars, one of the best defenses in the league. Devonta Freeman, obviously we know what he's done in Atlanta. Kelvin Benjamin, is he still in? I think he's still up in Buffalo. And then Nick O'Leary is a great lineman. And then obviously Jameis and our buddy Roberto Aguayo, who wishes he still was in Florida at Florida State. All right, number 3 is the 2001 Miami Hurricanes, and a lot of people think they should be number 1 because this was a dominant team. This is a team that had Clinton Portis and Ken Dorsey at quarterback, Andre Johnson, Jeremy Shockey, Frank Gore, Willis McGahee. I mean, they were just absolutely stacked, and that's just the offense. That was just the offense. The defense had Ed Reed and Jonathan Vilma and Mike Rumpf and DJ Williams and Philip Buchanan and Jeremy McDougal. This is a team that was just absolutely stacked. Just stacked. And this is after Ray Lewis left, actually, which is interesting. But, I mean, this is just absolutely stacked. And they won their national championship game. I mean, they gave up. They averaged 42 points. 42.7 points on offense. This is the college football. This only happens in college, really, where you can average 47.2 points and then average on the other side, giving up points allowed, 9.8. 9.8. They were averaging. They were beating their teams, the other teams, by an average of 33 points. 33 points point differential. So I mean, that's why you have. They're not quite as ranked as high as the next two teams because they played in the Big East at that time, actually, and did not quite have the schedule that they would have had now in the ACC. But you obviously did have to. They also had to survive some late scares in their final 3 games against Boston College, Virginia Tech, and Nebraska. Boston College, Virginia Tech, and then Nebraska was not they're saying what was quite the inferior opponent in the national championship game. So, still number 3. Number 2, Florida Gators, 2008 Florida Gators. Urban Meyers. This is obviously this is a team that Urban Meyer called the best to ever play the game. I mean, obviously he had a bias, but I mean, this is a team where 19 players from that team were eventually drafted. Obviously, Tim Tebow, one of the most decorated quarterbacks in college football history, led that offense to over 600 points on offense that season. Highest scoring total, actually, they had 611 points, which is the highest scoring total ever in the SEC. And also they played 8 of the nation's top 30 best defenses that season. So, I mean, it's pretty saying a lot because you're playing the SEC. You're going to play Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, LSU. And this is a team that touted NFL talent, of course. We said 19 of them were drafted eventually. Percy Harvin, Chris Rainey, Jeff Demps, Louis Murphy, David Nelson, and defensively Carlos Dunlap, Brandon Spikes, Joe Hayden. But basically that's your 3 levels of defense: lineman, linebacker, and a cornerback. So that's good right there. As this is the guy they were able to hold Sam Bradford. It's only 14 points in the national championship game. And then finally, the last one is the 2005 Texas Longhorns. This is the team that beat the USC, obviously. When Young was the underdog. Vince Young was underdog against a highly favored USC team, and Young was able to complete 30 of 40 for 267 yards, rushed for another 200 yards, and obviously had that dash for the touchdown with 18 seconds to go, or 8 seconds to go. It was 19 seconds. I said 18. I meant 19 seconds to go to win the game. All right, that's it. That's the show for today, as we will come back for you on Monday. So everybody have a good weekend, and we will talk to you later. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.